Hello, my friends. Hello, it's Matthew Street. Welcome to my channel. As always, I truly appreciate you being here. And folks, okay, for you younger Beatle fans, a little trivia for you. You older fans, you'll know this. It's easy as pie. But younger fans, as you know, back in the 60s, 70s, coming well into the 80s, the U.S. had their own kind of set of Beatles albums that were released, and then there were the UK versions, or the more international versions of the Beatles albums, which were considered more what the Beatles wanted. We're talking like Please Please Me with the Beatles, Hard Day's Night, Beatles for Sale, and on and on and on. In the US, it was like Meet the Beatles second album, something new, Beatles 65, Beatles 6. But then in the 80s, that all changed with the advent of CDs, and everything was consolidated. However, what is the one Beatles US album that was so good, so well put together, that EMI, Apple, the Beatles, whatever said, we got to put this and make it part of the official Beatles catalog, even though it originally was not? And that album, folks, is this one. Magical Mystery Tour. Yes, folks. When it first came out in the UK and many parts of the world in December of 1967, it came out as an EP. And this is it here. And you'll see the differences in the cover. Beautiful cover. I've always liked the cover on both. The little more yellow and whatnot on the full album version. But it came out in the UK like this as a 6-song EP, and this is it. Now, I got this when I was assigned to the Air Force over in England for over 2 years. You know me, I went all over the place and did what I could to get as much Beatles stuff and music as I could. And so at that time in the late 70s, I picked up this EP, and it has two 7-inch vinyl. There's on Parlophone. And you got Magical Mystery Tour, Your Mother Should Know, I Am the Walrus, Fool on the Hill, Flying, and Blue Jay Way. And it comes also with the same book, that you got in the US album version. You got that as well. And this is a beautiful collectible. If you don't have it, you probably should get it for your collection. But that's the way it was released in the UK and better parts of the world. But here in the US, in November of 67, we got this full album, Magical Mystery Tour, with those 6 songs plus 5 more. We got Hello, Goodbye, which were the singles around that time. Hello, Goodbye, Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich Man, and All You Need Is Love. And it fleshed it out to an 11-song full album. And this is my original CD that came out in the late 80s. And I love it. And it is part of the official Beatles catalog. Can you believe it? Now, I think that's great because let me tell you my story with Magical Mystery Tour and why I think it's a wonderful album and one of the best, even though it wasn't official originally, one of the best albums in the Beatles catalog. Number 1 in the United States, 6 times plus by now, platinum. That's how great this thing is. But it goes way, way back to the 1970s for me with this album. And I'm at school. I went to a small school in Massachusetts from grades 1 through 8. And I forget what grade I was in, but I know I was not in 8th grade. I was either in 5th grade or 6th grade. And every year in the spring, near the end of the school year, we would have a field day. They called it the school field day, where it was like a fun day. You could dress down, because back then kids dressed half decent for school, unlike today. So you had a dress down day where you could, wear jeans or something like that, or wear gym clothes or whatever. And we had field day, which was like they had a big cookout and there was desserts and the parents would bring baked goods. And then there were field events. There was running events, shooting baskets events, like kick the ball in the soccer net events, all kinds of fun stuff. Excuse me. And then casual stuff like it'd be an area where they'd set up a record player or a 8-track or cassette, whatever, and play music and that. And by this point, you know, if at the time I was in 5th or 6th grade, I'm 10 or 11 years old. I was well into my Beatle fandom by then. Parents had been buying me records since the 60s. And so I was starting to build my Beatles collection, my music collection, as it were. And all of a sudden, on this day, one of the 8th grade girls had this, the big full 12-inch Magical Mystery Tour album. You know, kids brought all kinds of music. On the field day, you could bring in music, cassettes or 8-tracks or whatever. But I remember she had the full 12-inch vinyl, and there was a record player there, and they were playing. And I might have heard some of the songs on this, but I hadn't heard the whole album. And I was so excited to see someone else like the Beatles. You know, back in those days, early to mid-70s, a lot of kids loved the Beatles, younger kids. And she put this on and started listening to it. And I couldn't believe it, folks. I was blown away by this album and how good it was. It was one good song after the other. I just loved it. You know, Magical Mystery Tour, Your Mother Should Know. It was so diverse in its sounds and what was coming out of the speakers, and yet it was just so pure Beatles and so them. And I loved the Beatles. And at this point, I was really a big, mega early Beatles fan. But this was one of my introductions to kind of like going into that later period of the Beatles. And I adored it. Hello, Goodbye. Penny Lane, I think I was sitting there with my mouth agape, like, it's so good. All You Need Is Love. It's just a wonderful, wonderful album. And so it was shortly thereafter that I knew what I wanted. And I don't remember how I acquired it, whether it was through a birthday or a holiday or, you know, allowance money or whatever. But my parents eventually let me get this. I wanted it so bad. I loved the cover. I thought that was so cool with the costumes and the vibrant colors and the design of it, the Beatles written in stars. I just loved it. It just drew me in. I think more so than Sgt. Pepper, believe it or not. This cover has always drawn me in and been something that I just think is so well done. And nothing against the UK EP, but, you know, as you can clearly see, there is a difference. And they're both beautiful, but there's something about this with the yellow border and the different design around here with the song titles I've always loved. So they got me this album. This is my original. At the time I got it, it was coming out on Apple. Although I do have a Capital Rainbow Swirl here somewhere, but this is my original on the Apple label. And if you ever saw my old video about Scotch tape Beatles and some of the protection, quote-unquote, protection jobs I did to some of my early albums, yes, this one has the Scotch tape on it. Young Matt Street, age 11 or 12, did put Scotch tape on it. Okay, I haven't forgiven myself since. So don't be too rough on me on that. But anyway, this is my original. I'm so happy to have it. Now, just a couple others I have. I didn't take them all out, but just to show you a couple of variations. I love this version here. This is a mono version, I believe. No, this is a stereo version, and it's on the green Target. I've always thought the green Target was a very unique and interesting label. So that is... Okay, yeah, that's a stereo on the green Target I have. And just one more to show you. I do have a still sealed one from the 1980s, if you can believe it. I put a little sticky note on the outside here. 80s pressing, still sealed. And I will not be opening that. I love having a sealed Magical Mystery Tour, albeit not on the Rainbow Swirl. That would be worth a ton. But I'm happy to have an 80s still sealed. But folks, the bottom line is that this album, when I heard it at that field day at school, I can see why eventually, when the CDs came out, it was made part of the official catalog. How can you ignore the greatness of the songs on here? The 6 new songs, and then taking those 5 singles, which were not on any album at the time, and putting them on here and making it for a wonderful album. Again, Sgt. Pepper was so crafted, so artistic, so, you know, the Beatles were honing in on what they wanted to do with Sgt. Pepper, whereas this wasn't even an album they basically created. It was this, and yet, in my opinion, this album is right up there with Sgt. Pepper. So in this case, in the case of many of the U.S. albums like Meet the Beatles second album, and for me, Beatles 6, and the Beatles' U.S. Rubber Soul were really well done U.S. albums. But this is the cream of the crop, and I think it's absolutely essential and was so fitting that they made this part of their official catalog. Absolutely. I agree. So I just want to hear what you all think. Just a quick video here to tout the beauty and wonder of Magical Mystery Tour and say, I love it. I think it's right up there with Sgt. Pepper. I'm not saying it's as genius or as groundbreaking as Sgt. Pepper was, but you know what? This was a home run, folks, an absolute home run, and I love it. One of my favorite Beatles albums. So let me know what you all think. What do you think of Magical Mystery Tour? Was it a hit that they put it out as a full album? Was it a miss? Should they have left it as an EP and not put it in the official catalog? I say no way. It deserves to be part of the official catalog. That's it, folks. Hope you're having a great day. A little Beatles content for you today, and I'll be back very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.